agent does work on your behalf, proactive, repeated, and much more like a teammate. But if I see one more demo that's like,
Every demo.
my AI agent can book a table for me at a restaurant, I'm gonna tear my eyes out. The most important thing you need to think about is the trigger. How is the AI gonna know it start doing work on its behalf? And then you stick that into a prompt, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Hot take, workflows are better than agents in almost all situations. If you have thousands of users signing up for your product, qualify them and look up their background and send them a personalized email, you better create an AI agent for that. The juice has to be worth the squeeze.
Can you talk through how a business can figure out what their first agent should be in as much detail as possible?
Yes. First, I want to clarify what I mean by agent. And I think the best way to describe what an agent is to contrast it against two other kinds of AI tools that we're all using. So first, everyone listening to this has used a chatbot like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. You go to a website and you type a synchronous text-based conversation. We know what this is good for. It's good for research. It's good for interactive thought partnership. It's good for critiquing writing, etc. That's a chatbot. The second modality that most of us are using, maybe not everyone yet, but we all will be soon, is a copilot. You know you're in a copilot experience if the main, say, 80% of the screen is an artifact that you're creating, like a document or a slide deck or some code. And then there's a copilot, could be natural language or could be inline, that uses AI to help you create that artifact. So Cursor, of course, is the famous copilot that helps you write code. Gamma is a copilot that helps you create slide decks, etc. And these tools are amazing. I don't mean to undersell them, but they're still fundamentally productivity tools in the traditional paradigm. I go visit an app or a website, I clickety-clack type on my keyboard, I do work in that place. And yes, AI can enhance the work I can do by giving me more capabilities and making me go faster, but it's still fundamentally a traditional productivity tool. An agent, on the other hand, does work on your behalf automatically on its own. It's proactive, it wakes up on its own and knows when to do work. It's integrated deeply into your tools, so it can write emails on your behalf. It can update calendar events on your behalf. It can write documents on your behalf. It can update blog posts on your behalf. And it does that work repeatedly over time and gets better. And so when you think about an agent as a proactive, integrated, repeated, autonomous system that is not a place to do work, but a doer of work, to me, the mental model for that is much less like a traditional productivity tool and much more like a teammate that I would have on my team. And so back to your question of how do you help people figure out the first agent that they would build? Think about who you would hire if you had infinite budget. Would you hire a virtual assistant? Would you hire a marketing contractor? Would you hire an ad agency? Do you have job recs open on your team right now in recruiting, in sales, in marketing support? What is the job description? What are the responsibilities of those tasks? And before immediately just throwing out a job description and hiring someone additional to your team, think hard about, could the AI agent do that task? So for example, if you're considering hiring an in-person assistant or a virtual assistant, and you write down that job description, brief me before my meetings, automatically draft follow-ups, automatically remind guests to RSVP, automatically triage my email to identify the most important and urgent things, you can build AI agents for all four of those use cases today. So that's the mental model I always have our customers start with, which is like, imagine you could hire a person. What would their job description? What would their responsibilities be? Of course, the AI agent can't do everything. The AI agent is not going to take your client out to an in-person lunch. But a lot of the things that can happen just in our tools and in the arena of knowledge work, an AI agent can do. And so that's been the mental model that has, I think, really unlocked the potential for lots of our customers.
And is it fair to say that if you're thinking about all of those different tasks, but you're not sure where the technology is today, the best way to think about it is like, what's something that the instructions would be very specific and short, and I could expect the same outcome from that person without having to overly think about it?
Exactly. I think the most important thing you need to think about is the trigger. How is the AI going to know it start doing work on its behalf? Is it going to trigger when a new email comes in? Is it going to trigger when a new calendar event is created? Is it going to trigger when a new lead signs up on our website? Is it going to trigger when our competitor launches something, etc.? Once you have the trigger, then you have to figure out, what are you going to have the AI agent do based on that trigger? Is it going to respond to the email? Is it going to send you a briefing for the calendar event? Is it going to write you an analysis of your competitor's launch? And then you stick that into a prompt, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Like, when should the AI wake up and do its work? What instructions do you want to give it to do its job? And that gets you, 90% of the way to something useful. Then there's, of course, tuning and testing and human in the loop, which we can talk about. But the reason I like the human metaphor again is the human teammate metaphor is you don't want to use an agent for infrequent or one-off tasks. Like, let's say you're planning a trip with your family next summer. That is not an appropriate use case for an agent. You don't need it to be proactive. You don't need it to be repeated. That's a chatbot use case. Just go to ChatGPT and tell it where your family wants to go, and it'll give you some suggestions. That's a big, because there's so much hype around AI agents. I've seen a lot of people trying to use AI agents as a hammer for every nail, and
Mm.
it's not appropriate for every nail. If you want to plan a trip, use a chatbot. If you want to make a slide deck once, use Gamma. What you want to use an agent for is something that happens frequently, repeatedly over time, and you want a teammate to do that work proactively.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting you said travel because that's what everyone seems to demo. And every time I see that, I'm like, I would never do that because there's so much nuance. Like, I
I
like
just,
certain types of hotels. My kids need this. Like, there's a million things when you're planning travel that it's not easy to set those
yeah,
instructions.
I find that use case so funny because on the one hand, yes, chatbots can be helpful for travel, letting you know kind of what options exist or what to consider. But if I see one more demo that's like,
Every
my
demo.
AI agent can book a table for me at a restaurant, I'm going to tear my eyes out because why would I have an AI agent spend 4 minutes doing something with 30% accuracy that's 2 clicks? This is something I always tell our customers. Like, when you're setting up an agent, the juice has to be worth the squeeze. If you
Yeah.
book one table for a monthly date night, just go to Open Table and click the buttons. Like, that is not a good use of an AI agent. On the other hand, if you have thousands of users signing up for your product every single week and you need to qualify them and look up their background and send them a personalized email, you better create an AI agent for that because that's going to be hundreds of hours of work that a human would have to do. That's when it's worth it.
And how do you figure out like when human in the loop is important? Like when do you trust agents without humans and where do you feel that they're still needed in the loop?
Every task, there are two axes you need to think about. Number one, how good is AI at this task? And number two, how high stakes is the task? If AI is very good and the task is low stakes, you don't need a human in the loop. For example, I have a bunch of AI agents that do content and competitive research for me. For example, I have one AI agent that every week looks at what people are saying about our competitors on Reddit. AI is amazing at it, and it's low stakes. If it gets the competitive research report wrong, it's an internal only artifact. Like, it's okay if it's not the perfect report. So I do not need a human in the loop for that. On the other hand, if content is ever going to be posted on my public LinkedIn profile, if an email is ever going to be sent to a customer, I consider those high stakes interactions. And so I always include a human in the loop.
No, I think that makes sense, right? I think research is such a great use case, like proactive research,
Yep.
because there's no stakes. It's just something you have to review
Exactly.
and
It's
then
a
you can do
bonus.
what
It's
you
a
want
bonus.
with
You
it.
never would have done it yourself anyway. So even if the AI only does a B plus report, it's still a huge amount of value compared to nothing. Whereas an email follow up to a critical prospect, you always would have done that. And the AI agent can accelerate how you do it. But I personally would never feel comfortable fully sending an email to a high stakes client without a human in the loop review. Now,
So I
but
think
there's nuances here because we write a bunch of different social media posts. Some of them are original posts, some of them are research based posts, some of them are repurposed posts. I used to have a human in the loop that would double check whenever I publish a new YouTube video, we automatically post about it on LinkedIn. And I used to have a human in the loop for that because I was like, oh, if it's going to go on my LinkedIn, I really want to double check it. And then after 10 times of just clicking accept, 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 I realized the AI was good enough at that task that I didn't need a human in the loop anymore.
I just threw that up there as well because it seems like that's what you're doing. So I just put that on
Yeah.
the screen.
Yeah, exactly. So I think in content creation, I don't know if you can, yeah, LinkedIn. Do you see where it says LinkedIn post writer for new YouTube videos?
Yeah.
That second one in the middle column, that's the one where I used to have a human in the loop, and then I decided I don't need a human in the loop anymore because based on the transcript of a YouTube video and based on my voice on LinkedIn, it's just perfect every time. I don't need to touch it.
Can you explain what you mean by your voice on LinkedIn? Like, are you using uh the human posts and replies that you've used in the past to make the agent do a better job? And if so, like, how are you thinking through that? And when did it kind of hit that critical mass where you think it's there?
So a year or two ago, all the rage was about prompt engineering. Prompt engineer. Write this 500-word prompt of explaining your writing style. And in my experience, prompt engineering is much less important than data and context engineering. So in all of these use cases that you see on screen now, you would be shocked at how simple these prompts are. They're often like 1 line or 2 line prompts. Like literally for that YouTube post one, it is literally given a YouTube video, please write a LinkedIn post. That's the whole prompt. Now, critically, I have to give it a little bit of context, which is 3 good posts I've done in the past.
That's
That's
it,
all it
huh?
took. I
Okay.
give it 3 good posts I've done in the past. In some cases, just one. But in this case, I think I have 3 good posts I've done in the past. I say, write a new LinkedIn post for this YouTube video. Here's 3 examples of good posts I've done in the past. Go. And it's perfect.
That's interesting. Okay. So you are, so for example, you would be using this influencer analyzer to maybe see what other people are posting about, what the trends are. For example, you figure out where it's a good fit for you to post, and then you would get your agent to develop a post on it. Um,
Yeah, so I actually don't use the agent for post writing in that particular use case.
okay.
I just use the agent for content research. Because for me, the hardest part about posting is figuring out what topic to write about. Once I know a topic, the whole point is that I'm going to share some unique insight or anecdote or something that's unique to me that's going to be resonant, but I often don't know what topic to choose. So I have a bunch of AI agents that do content research for me in various ways. They look at which posts are trending on LinkedIn. They look at which posts are trending on Reddit. They look at which posts are trending on X. So, for example, a couple weeks ago, one of my content research agents found me a really popular post on the N8N subreddit about this person who had built their own super complicated personal assistant using N8N and had tons of upvotes on Reddit, which means the topic was resonant. But then I looked at the post and I was like, there's no way that works. Like, it's way too complicated. Like, it's way over engineered. Let me make a version of that post for myself that shows my actual executive assistant, which instead of having this like 500 node N8N diagram, is just, 10 individual related app workflows, each of which is super understandable. And so I still had to create the unique visual. I had to still write the post because it was personal to me, but I got the idea and I knew that post would perform well on LinkedIn because I could already tell based on the reception on Reddit that people cared about that topic.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And how do you think creators should be using agents right now? So I'm just gonna give you some hypothetical person, right? So they make YouTube content. They have a good audience. They make like long videos. They use something like Opus for shorts, and that's about all they're doing. Like, what are the maybe high leverage things they could be doing to either expand on YouTube or on other platforms?
Here are the 3 opportunities that I'm most excited about. Number 1, content research. The best YouTubers are very good at this, right? Like in every niche, they're constantly looking at other creators. They're seeing which videos are performing well, and they're doing their own versions of those videos. So content research is critical, and it's really hard to have time to watch 1,000 YouTube videos a day yourself, but your AI agent can. And so content research is number 1. Then number 2 is engagement and follow up. So this may be less relevant to YouTube, maybe it is, but in my case, I'm selling a B2B software product. And so whenever anyone engages with our YouTube channel or with my LinkedIn post or my X, like I want to start a conversation with them. I want to know, like, are they a relevant target user for our product? What can I learn about them or their company or their role? And so the second thing I use agents for, anytime someone comments on or reacts to one of my LinkedIn posts, I automatically log them. I have an agent that automatically logs them in the CRM. It logs which post they reacted to, and it does some automatic AI enrichment and suggestions of whether that person should be a target user for us and what they might use the product for. That's number 2. And then number 3 is content repurposing. Like, you're already doing a little bit with, you said turning a long form video into shorts on Opus, but got to get those things up onto X. You got to get them onto Instagram. You got to get them onto LinkedIn. You got to get them onto TikTok. And each of those platforms might have slightly different style of what you put in the title or what you put in the post. And so I found that an AI agent is typically not very good at creating original content, but it's very good at content repurposing. So those are the 3 things I would immediately do: content research, follow up and engagement, and content repurposing.
Yeah, I think it can do it automatically, some of the content repurposing, like it can grab a transcript, it can make a post. But I do think if it's something you're passionate about and you wrote the content, like you could probably add a couple of lines there and your unique purpose or how you see the discussion. Like we're having this conversation. If I turn this into LinkedIn post, I would explain, okay, how do I see this trend being used? Give my unique point of view. Because I
Yes.
think that's really important, especially depending on the platform. Like I think on X, for example, you can't get away with just doing AI posts. It won't get any
Yeah,
engagement, while
and to be
LinkedIn will
clear,
get more because of the
when I say
audience.
when I say content repurposing, I mean you have already created a nugget of original value in your
Okay.
video, and then the AI can help bring that nugget to other formats. The AI will not create that nugget of value, but if you've already made a great 15-minute long form video that has several nuggets of value, AI is pretty good at extracting those nuggets and then writing them into a LinkedIn post in a way that'll work on that platform.
Okay. And are there certain things that you feel we're just not there yet? Like, for example, I tried to turn a YouTube transcript into like a LinkedIn carousel and bashed my head like 50 times. So it just feels like it's good to understand where the tech is right now and then just also be aware of the manual stuff you're doing now. And as the trend continues, then just automate with agents
Yeah,
when you can.
I'll give you a perfect example of this. For a long time, I told people that image generation is not ready to be useful for functional imagery. Like the image generation models were always really good at cinematic imagery, like look, there's a Viking ship going through a storm. Like it would be this amazing thing. But if you asked it to create a simple infographic, it would totally fail. It would spell things wrong. It would get the bars wrong, etc. So I said for a long time, like image generation is great for cinematic imagery, but it's not yet ready for functional imagery, posters, carousels, ads, etc. I think the newest Gemini 2.5 Flash model, Nano Banana, has been a material leap forward there. I've actually been able to use Nano Banana for some lightweight functional image creation, like webinar posters, but it's still probably not good enough for like an original 6-item carousel or an infographic. But that's an area where I bet when we have this conversation again a year from now,
Yeah,
AI
it'll be
image
there.
generation will have nailed those use cases. Another
Yeah.
thing that hasn't worked for me yet is digital twins. So I tried, I create a lot of tutorial videos, and I thought to myself, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I could just write a script of the tutorial video and then a digital twin would do the video and audio automatically? And I did not find that to be um, real enough to be credible. So those are a couple of the examples of things that AI wasn't good enough at yet, but I suspect in a year it will be. Oh, third example, have you played around with any of the computer use or browser use tools from OpenAI or Anthropic that like can automatically log into a website for you and pull down some of the content? I haven't found those to be reliable enough for real use in my agents, but again, within a year, I think we'll get there. And the only way to know this is to just play with it yourself. You just got to test it out and see like, did this work for me in this use case? If so, great. If not, I'll try again in 3 months.
Yeah, I think that just makes me think. So you're obviously trying to stay on the top of the trend because you're working in the agent space and essentially it's building like a flywheel for you, right? The better the agent get, the more agents you can use, the more you can show the agents, the more customers you get. How much time are you spending on content that's like useful today, like timeful versus timeless wisdom type founder content?
95% of my content is focused on use cases that are ready to be valuable today. Because everything that's valuable today will still be valuable a year from now. Like, but I'm really careful because again, our audience is non-technical SMBs. And so they typically don't have the technical sophistication to do more advanced use cases. And B, I really don't want to overpromise and underdeliver for them. So my my sort of personal brand in like my educational content on LinkedIn and on YouTube is simple, approachable, but actually works. And that's sort of the brand I build up. Like if I show a screenshot of an agent that I claim to use, I actually use it. Like I don't want to create these like dubious quality, very complex agent diagrams that I'm skeptical anyone's actually using.
So if you were to spend 2 hours with a founder of an SMB, let's say they're non-technical, how do you think you would be able to identify opportunities that maybe they couldn't? And then why would you be able to implement it better than them? Like I'm trying to understand maybe the gap in what someone technical can do who has product experience versus like I run this SMB for 20 years. Like where's the gap? What's the gap right now?
Yeah, I think it's not a matter of coding, but there is a degree of structured thinking that comes from a computer science background that's really important because you need to be able to articulate, let's say you want to build an invoice management agent. You need to think, how do the invoices come in? Okay, they come in over email or via a web form. When the invoices come in, what is the knowledge base of categories that I want to use to perform the categorization? What is the prompt I'm going to use to do the categorization? Once they're categorized, where do they need to go? Do they need to go to QuickBooks or Xero or a spreadsheet? And so when I'm talking to these small businesses, my role is more as an interpreter, where they say, I want help managing my invoices. And then I ask them, well, tell me step by step exactly what is the process. And this way of thinking, first this happens, then this happens, then this happens, is very natural for process oriented people and for computer scientists. I found that it is not a natural way of thinking for a typical small business owner. And so what I help them do is turn their kind of abstract desire of like, I want help managing my invoices into a step-by-step specification that they can actually use for their agent.
Okay. That makes sense. I'm going to move things in a bit of a different direction. So you've mentioned you learned from Notion to start with retention and depth of engagement first, and then move to activation and last top of funnel. Can you talk through how you did each step in as much detail as possible?
Yeah, and this was also a learning from my first company where we had pretty good top of funnel through the app store, but terrible retention. And I don't want to run a business like that ever again, where you just have a leaky bucket that you're pushing people into. Um, one mistake that I've made in the past that I've seen other founders make is it can be easy to try to become reliant on data too early. Like, oh, here's our activation rate or here's our growth rate. And really, in the early days, when you're trying to make sure your service has value, you want to have really, really deep conversations with your actual customers. So like for the first 10 customers who signed up for Relay, I know everything about their business, everything about what they were trying to do, everything about where the product delivered value and didn't deliver value. And I made sure we got to the point where they loved the product before worrying about getting on to customer 15 or 20 or 100. I'm not sure how to balance this advice because, of course, startups are a game of growth and you always want to be growing, 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 growing. But the way I think about it is more startups are a game of leveling up. And the leveling up doesn't exactly match a growth curve. So for me, you level up when you get the first customer to pay for your thing. You level up when you have 10 that really love it. You level up again when you have 100 that really love it. And if you try to rush, I've seen a lot of people rush from 10 to 100 without the 10 really loving the thing because it's so tempting to be like, gotta grow, gotta grow, gotta grow, gotta grow. And so, or similarly, like, gotta get more top of funnel, gotta spend money on ads, gotta build top of
Mhm.
funnel, gotta spend more money on ads, or these are like common pitfalls I see people fall into. And so because I'm optimizing for a very long-term compounding business, we haven't spent any money on ads. We haven't done
Amazing.
any outbound. We haven't built up a professional services or forward deployed engineering organization. All of those things would have given us a much higher revenue number than we have right now. But because we haven't done any of those things, I'm confident that the business is on like a rock solid foundation because I really know who the customer is, what they're using it for, why they've chosen our product, why they can't really switch from our product to any other because it's unique. And so maybe this is going to be a weird thing to say, but here are my two things. Number one, anecdotes over data for surprisingly long anecdotes over data, maybe forever. Actually, I think there's this big myth that data driven is better than anecdotal. It's not been true in my experience. And the second thing that's true is rush when the time is right, but it's not. You don't always need to rush. Sometimes, like if you're just doing discovery calls, having 500 discovery calls as opposed to 20 discovery calls, if you're not actually digesting the insights from those discovery calls, is not obviously better. And so uh those are my two big lessons, like anecdotes over data, and then don't rush. Make sure you're building on a solid foundation before you go to the next step.
I actually find this is a challenge a lot of second time founders make because the first time they didn't know as much. So they just tried things and they went for it. And now they feel like they know where everything can go wrong. So we almost optimize on data and like we don't just trust our intuition and our taste because it's less quantifiable, but we have the experience. So we should actually just trust that we have the taste and that we can iterate when we hear things.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's a certain kind of person who looks for an unreasonable degree of certainty before making decisions. And we just don't have that luxury in startups. We have to decide based on very limited information and trust the fact that we can adapt quickly if we made the wrong decision.
Absolutely. And I think that is probably one of the more important lessons is like all you can do is gather data quickly, make a decision, and just know that you can always change the decision. There's only a few decisions you can never change. Most decisions you can always roll back or you could always change your approach.
There's almost no decisions in a software startup that are unchangeable. Like, yeah, it's different if you're doing hardware and you've sent something out, a spec out to the manufacturer, but like if you're doing software, it is so easy to make changes.
For sure. And you mentioned that you haven't really looked to expand outside of the kind of organic content stuff. I actually think you have a pretty large opportunity with things like trade shows in the physical world. I don't know if doing it yourself, but even having an affiliate, and building a partner program there, I feel like if someone went to shows on your behalf and you gave them 30 or 50%, they would bring in a lot of business and it'd be like a good form of leverage for your business.
I totally believe we could and we should someday. But right now, I really want to stay focused on what I think is going to be our long term winning strategy, which is we want to build the most intuitive and easiest to use agent building product for less technical audiences.
Yep, for sure.
And 100% of my time and effort is going into that, because if we go up market, if we go to trade shows, I worry that that would water down our ability to build the foundation. So this is what I mean by like, I want, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there'll be another company with a slightly worse product that just dominates the go to market, and I end up telling you this was wrong. But my intuition leans very strongly towards like, I'm okay to grow a little slower to make sure that foundation is rock solid.
No, I also
Because,
think
and it's so easy to get FOMO. Like, this is another thing that's so hard about this world we're in right now. It's so easy to look at these YC companies or Lovable or Cursor that's going 0 to 100 million in 1 year, and constantly compare yourself to those. But you just have to run your own race. You have to run your own race, right?
yeah, I think that's good advice in general. It's like run your own race, go with the strategy that makes sense for you long term. And to be honest, we live in a world that the best form of distribution is organic distribution long term. Because if you can build that, it's not going to go anywhere. You can always
Because
spend a lot of money and go in a different direction if you
this is my
want.
fear. I have friends who have companies that spend $1 million a month on paid ads. And then when growth slows down, that's a really scary place to be, because you have to keep spending $1 million a month just to maintain your user base at
Yeah,
that point. Whereas if we have a user base that's growing with no incremental spend, like it's such a solid foundation for us to be on.
absolutely. Question for you here. What is something most founders over optimize, but there's either a framework or a quick fix they could do instead?
I think most founders, including myself, over optimize on expenses that don't matter. Like, who cares if we're paying our mailing list software $250 or $350 a month? Like, that is so irrelevant in the long term scheme of the business. It's the same as like when I go to Costco, if salmon is on sale for $1, I'm like, oh my God, I got to get salmon. That dollar has no impact on our long term finances as a family. And I think the same in a company. Like, people will agonize over buying a $50 subscription, and then they'll turn around and advocate for hiring someone who costs $15,000 a month. And so the quick fix for me is like, almost ignore any expense under $1,000 a month, certainly under $500 a month, but agonize over every human you're adding to the team. Because I've seen too many people do the opposite. They agonize over the $10 expense, and then they're just like willy nilly about hiring.
So I think that's really interesting. You had mentioned, I think that you have thousands of customers and you could see yourself getting to like 100K users with the same headcount. So I'm actually curious, how did your experience at Google, knowing how hard it was to move quickly and get consensus,
Yep.
influence your strategy to stay small?
Yeah. So for a long time, we used to say you need big teams to do big things. And I just don't believe that's true anymore, especially in an age of AI where we have more leverage. And it kills me whenever I see a startup fundraising announcement say, "We raised a $50 million Series A so we can double the team and move faster." Not my experience. Like in my professional experience, the reason things move slowly is not because the core work is hard. It's because it's hard to get people to agree. And so inevitably, if the actual bottleneck to moving quickly is coordination cost, then small teams are going to move faster. Big teams can do more, they can have more throughput, but on any individual task, small teams can move way faster. And so to me, this is, I saw another tweet that kind of bugged me a few months ago. Someone said, "I want to prove that I can build a unicorn or $1 billion company with only 10 people, just like people proved that they could climb Everest with no oxygen." I think that's a stupid mentality. If you're climbing Everest, take oxygen. Like startups are hard enough. Like
Y-
you need every advantage you can get. The reason I want to build a $1 billion company with a 10-person team is not because I want to prove that I can do something harder. I just think it's the best way to do it. I think it's the best way to build a great product and have a super high velocity culture.
Yeah, you need to know what you're trying to do and what resources you need
Yeah,
and then execute with those resources. But you shouldn't take unlimited resources because there's actually a power in scarcity, right? Like
totally.
scarcity in money, but also scarcity in time, right? Like if you tell yourself you're going to get something done tomorrow compared to like 2 weeks from now, it's like Parkinson's law. Like that scarcity amplifies and gets things done.
Exactly. And so for as long as we are a self-serve, word of mouth, inbound business whose success is driven by having the best and most intuitive product, adding more people than we have now would make it harder for us to execute on that strategy. Now, we're 10 people right now. At some point, we'll probably need a customer support person. We're doing a lot with AI, we're distributing across the team. At some point, we'll need a customer support person. At some point, we may need someone to help me with marketing. So I'm not saying we're going to be literally 10 people when we're at 10x or 100x the
Sure.
scale,
But not
but
100 people.
we'll probably be way less, way less. I think we
50.
could be 100x our scale with like 12 or 13 people. I can't imagine with our current go-to-market strategy how we would ever need to be more than 20 people. Now, if we decide to go up market and have an enterprise motion where we have sales and implementation and customer success, of course that would require a bigger team, of course. But in a world where we are a self-serve product that caters to small and medium businesses in a totally self-serve way, like I don't see any reason why we'd ever need to be more than 20 people.
And I think there's ways to even expand the sales without having them as your headcount.
Totally. Like already now we have partners that are selling our product. And I am very happy for the partners to get a disproportionate percentage of the economic value because it allows me to keep my operation simple. And that's
Yeah, so
valuable
when
to me.
when I had Synergize, we gave the big partners 50%
Yeah,
and like our competitors were getting like 10 or 20 and then they closed like some six-figure deals with no effort on our part. And I'm like, yeah, you guys take the 75K and now we also have a case study from a large enterprise customer. Like there's so much
exactly.
value being added because they have trust that I don't have. So if I pitch it to them, I'm not going to have the trust that at that time it was like Cloud Sherpas or whatever it was.
Right.
They have the trust with the customer. So there are ways to scale, but without it hitting your headcount. And I think sometimes people want to hit their headcount because they can be greedy. We want 100% of the revenue. That might not be the right approach.
Yeah, and I'm not advising anyone else on how to run their business, but I think for us this is the right approach.
Awesome. So I'm going to end. Sorry, I have a question here. Give me a hot take or unpopular opinion you have and why.
Hot take, workflows are better than agents in almost all situations.
Sorry, say that again.
Workflows are better than agents in almost all situations. And here I mean the technical definition of a workflow and an agent. So in a workflow, the flowchart of the task is predefined in advance, And of course, you have AI steps within it where the AI might classify the email or extract information from it or write a reply, but you've outlined the overall flowchart of the task. In an agent, you've basically said, triage my email, go. And the
Yeah, yeah.
tools you have available to you are you can write prompts and you can compose emails, etc. And there's so much hype about agentic experiences right now. And I think the concept of an agent that I mentioned earlier, doing work on your behalf, that's super powerful and important. But that doesn't mean you need to have the agent rediscover from first principles how to do the task every single time. If you know there's a good way to do the task, just write it into a workflow. And so, for example, like when OpenAI did its big announcement yesterday, and their agent builder only works via MCP, I think that's a huge mistake for most users to use MCP as opposed to deterministic integrations because you're introducing a ton of risk, a ton of non-determinism, a ton of latency, a ton of cost for no benefit.
Yeah, I think it's a different market they're going after, right?
Yeah,
Like
and now
they're
they're
going
building for technical teams and developers, but even so, like I see so many customers who are like, "Oh, but I want a real agent, not just a workflow." And I ask them, "Well, why? If you already
what
know,
problem are you trying to solve?
yeah, if you
How do you
know that
solve
you
it,
want to do the
right?
same 5 steps in lead qualification every time, just write down those 5 steps. Don't make an agent rediscover them every time from scratch."
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so I'm gonna end today off with kind of a fun question here. So I actually believe we learn a lot of lessons from the hobbies that we have growing up, and it kind of shapes who we are. So I know you played tennis at Cornell and even in high school in the days of playing doubles with Ian LaPhillip. Can you talk through your time playing tennis and if there's any lessons that stick out that have helped you as a founder?
It's so funny. Um, so yeah, I was big into tennis growing up, and then I switched to squash in college, and I've been a big racket sports player my whole life. I think one of the things I liked a lot about tennis in both its individual form and doubles form was I learned very different things. In singles tennis, I think I learned a lot of mental toughness and emotional regulation because like you can feel like you're unstoppable one moment and it's totally hopeless the next moment and then you're unstoppable again the next moment. And that is very analogous to the startup journey. And so you learn to just like, keep powering through, keep playing your game, keep, hitting the right shots with the right fundamentals and it'll work out or it won't, but you can't let yourself fall for the big emotional swings. And then in doubles tennis, it's a totally different sport and a totally different dynamic because you have this shared energy with your team. And when they're down, you have to lift them up. And when you're down, they have to lift you up. And you have to figure out what they're good at and what you're good at. And that, and so those two together in different ways have actually been very good preparation for company building. Singles teaches you like the mental toughness, and doubles teaches you how to play to people's strengths and manage morale.
Yeah, I play tennis just kind of recreationally and I heard something a while ago that's always kind of stuck with me. It's like if a ball goes out, to you, you feel like it's a positive thing. To your opponent, sorry, to you, it's a negative thing. To your opponent, it's a good thing. But to the referee, it's just out. They have no emotional attachment to it. So
Yeah.
we kind of have these feelings around the outcome of things, but sometimes it's best just to be like a referee and be indifferent.
Yeah, I mean, it's another thing that point brings up in my mind is like I've always been so cautious about posting on social media or putting myself out there. I'm like, oh no, what if I post the same thing twice in a row and everyone will see it and they'll think I'm stupid? Nobody cares.
Nobody
Just
cares.
nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like, no one cares. No one knows. No one remembers. Like we get in our way too much. The other tennis analogy that I think a lot of people have been referencing recently that also resonates is, Roger Federer did the Dartmouth commencement speech. I think it was Dartmouth last year, a couple years ago, and he said, "Guess what percentage of points he won in his career?
Yeah,
He won
it was
over
like
80%.
it was like
It was
53 or something, right?
52
Yeah.
percent of points. So he won, 80 plus percent of his matches, top three tennis player of all time, at times seemed totally unstoppable, 52% of points. And I think the lesson you take away from that is like, if you play the game right and you focus on the few elements of startup building that really matter and you win those points, you build a hugely successful company. It goes back to my point about not worrying about the $50 cursor subscription. Who cares about the $50 cursor subscription? Nail the really critical sales conversation with a showcase customer. And like, if you win that point, then it sets your business on a totally different trajectory.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think the other part of that is like that means he lost 48% of his points and
Yeah,
he
exactly.
didn't beat himself up on it, right?
Yeah.
Like the greats miss shots. So how can you expect perfection from yourself when the greatest of all times miss half their points, right? They
Yeah.
make unforced errors or they
I
get beat
thought
by winners.
that was so cool that he framed it in that way, and it really made me think.
Because you would think it's like 60%.
You would have thought 60, with an 80% winning percentage, maybe you would have thought 80%. Like, you don't know, 80%, like, because 80% of points corresponds to 80% of matches or something, but it's not even close to that.
Yeah, tennis is an interesting game too because it's one of the only games where there's not really a coach on the court supporting you. When
Yeah,
most
that's where
games,
you learn the mental toughness. Like, you are just in your own head. Because even in golf, you have your caddy. In Formula One, you've got the person in your ear. Tennis, you're just out there by yourself.
and there's no one you can blame, especially in singles because you're on one side by yourself. There's no one getting in
No,
your way.
no, no, no
It's
one,
on
no
you.
one, no one to blame. I think that's another really, really important lesson. I remember when I was an intern at Google back in 2009 ish, the person who was running search at the time was a guy named Udi Manbar. And he was the lead of the whole search division. I remember he got up at TGIF. You remember TGIF, which is like the internal Google presentation. It was different back then. It was much more kind of open and fluid. And he had this slide that really stuck with me, over 15 years later. He said, if there's not enough content on the web, that's our problem. If there's not enough servers in the world, that's our problem. If the user doesn't know how to spell, that's our problem. If the user doesn't know English, that's our problem. If the latency is too slow, if they're on a slow internet connection, that's our problem. Because it's so easy in a startup to say, like, well, this circumstance was out of our control. We couldn't do that. We couldn't do this. We couldn't do that. And I thought it was such a good mindset to just say, our job is to deliver a great experience to the end user. We do not make any excuses about any circumstance. Everything is our problem. If their internet connection is too slow, let's build fiber to their house. If there's not enough computers in the
Yeah.
world, let's build our own data centers. If no publisher has created this content, let's create it ourselves.
And I think if you're running a business, it's the same thing, right? If there's any issues, it's ultimately on you. You have an issue with the vendor, maybe you have maybe you're not good at selecting vendors. Maybe you went with the cheapest solution instead of the best long-term relationship. You're complaining about an employee. Maybe you're not good at hiring. Maybe you didn't give
Yeah,
them the right
and
incentives.
even if the vendor did miss your expedition, it's still your problem to deal with it. Like, you don't get any credit, you don't get any bonus points for blaming someone else.
No, you just have to resolve it
Yep.
or do a post-mortem and figure out how to not make that mistake again.
Yep.
Awesome. Jacob, thank you so much for your time today. Where can everyone find you?
Oh, great to talk to you. Find me on LinkedIn. You'll see my posts there multiple times a week. And I also have a budding YouTube channel where I create tutorials of how to build AI agents. So if you're interested in getting your hands dirty with AI agents and using them in your business, those are the two places to find me.
Thanks for your time, man.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.